Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video today we'll be removing this 100 amp main breaker panel with 20 circuits, and we'll be upgrading to a 200 amp panel with 40 circuits. We'll also be updating the service entrance conductors from the meter to the main breaker panel, and then at the end we're going to install a manual transfer interlock switch in this panel, and then we'll install portable generator wiring for a portable generator connection. If you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments. And again, thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate it. So as with any panel change or upgrade or service upgrade, we want to turn off the main breaker and all the individual breakers before we pull the meter so we don't have any arcing going on. This house is actually a friend of mine from my hockey team. This is in Middletown, New Jersey. And so he asked me if I could, I originally came over to the house because his refrigerator circuit kept going out. He couldn't figure out why. There was no breakers tripped. There was no GFCIs tripped. But just sporadically the receptacle for the refrigerator wouldn't work. And so I came over there maybe 2 months before I'm actually here doing this upgrade. And sure enough, it was that old GE panel with a non-GE circuit breaker inside the panel. And what the problem was with the different brand breaker inside the GE panel is the circuit breaker was making no connection to the bus bar, or was very loose rather. So as soon as I took the panel cover off, there was no power at that particular breaker. Then when you pushed it in just a little bit with the cover off, it came on. So obviously it wasn't making a good contact with the bus bar, and that's very dangerous, especially with something that has a larger load than a modern day refrigerator, which isn't very much at all. But if you had plugged in, like a microwave to that circuit, or if it was an electric oven, a double pole electric oven, something like that, and you put the wrong breaker inside that panel, the arcing could cause a fire. That's just how it is. It gets, it's very hot, the arc flash, and God forbid it comes in contact with anything that's combustible, and you will have a fire. It's as simple as that. So that's why I was here, and I said, look, this whole panel, we're just patching it right now. So let's take this out. We'll bump you up to 200 amps. You'll have 40 circuits to work with, minus however many there are in this panel, which was probably about 20 or less, I imagine. I didn't count exactly. There's a lot of twin small breakers in there. One double pole breaker for one zone of air conditioning. The double pole is the condensing unit. And he has every other circuit in this house was 120 volts, so it was pretty simple to disconnect everything and put it back inside the panel. So taking these breakers out, I just do it one at a time. Of course, I didn't even have to mark my double pole breaker, but normally if there's more than one double pole breaker in the panel and it's a 15 or 20 amp circuit, what I do is I take the wires off of the circuit breaker and I wrap vinyl electrical tape around the two wires that were going to the double pole breaker. This way, when I go to put it back inside the panel, I know that that's a 240 volt circuit and it requires a double pole circuit breaker. So all these circuit breakers by GE, right in the trash. I'm not a big fan of GE. Maybe they had a big market share years ago. When I take out these old panels, I feel like they're just built like garbage, but that's just my own opinion. Some people will tell me the Cutler hammer panels that I'm putting in, that those are garbage. Whatever. Of course, there's all different levels. You can either sell Cadillacs or Hyundais, but if you're somewhere in the middle like I am, that's just where I am. So I've put in square D panels before, and I've put in the CH Cutler hammer panels. They're good. They cost more money. I give people the option. Do you want to pay another $500 or $600 for this panel with the circuit breakers, or would you rather pay this? This is what I would put in my house. And most people take my advice, and that's why I put in the Cutler hammer, the BR line here. So some of these circuits were marked already with those tags, so there was some remodeling done at some point. I think the kitchen was redone. So we like to keep these markers on there, so when I put them into the new panel and identify the circuits later on, I know what's what for the most part. We'll double check, but they're pretty accurate if they have those jackets around the conductors inside the panel. So here I'm just disconnecting all these breakers, and then I'm going to undo all the neutrals and all the grounds, and then eventually I got to undo the nipple coming into the back of the panel in that lower left hand corner there, and we'll cut the service entrance conductors out, and then we'll have to figure out a way to fit a larger nipple from the back of the meter outside to the inside of this panel, which you'll see later on isn't the simplest thing to do because there's not that much room. And so I had to tap into the enclosure, the new breaker panel, at an area that wasn't really designed to come in at that spot, but that was the only place I could put it. And one of the reasons why, I'll explain to you later, is the 78-inch rule. So you can't have a circuit breaker larger than 6 feet 6 inches tall. So when I work in an area like this, I usually mark where 78 inches is, which is 6 feet 6 inches. And I'll mark it in pencil on the wall so I know, and then I know my main breaker can't be higher than that. And no breaker could be higher than, not just the main breaker, but any individual breaker cannot be higher than 6 feet 6 inches. That's what the code says. So putting these panels in isn't always as simple as you would hope they would be. As you'll see later on in this video too, I'll have to cut out a bunch of sheetrock just to access some of the wiring going into the panel, into the bottom of the panel, to make room for the new panel, including that receptacle down below the panel. That gets moved over to the right, and a new one gets put into the left to make up for the difference of the wiring that wouldn't reach the new location of the receptacle. At this point, we're in full progress here, and what I'm doing is removing the lock nuts from each of the individual breakers. I'm sorry, from each of the individual circuits. Most of those circuits to the left are new ones for the refrigerator, for the kitchen remodel that I was talking about. No connectors at all, that bothers me. Just get a connector in there somehow, whether you got to open up the sheetrock or not. Get a connector so that it's connected properly to the enclosure. All right, the sharp edges when you make the opening, you know, it could damage the conductor. I can't say I haven't seen that, but I don't see that too normally. So I would definitely put a connector in there. I have to. I'm a licensed guy. I cannot put something in with no connectors. So do that. So here, what I got to do is I got to open up the sheetrock because I got to move that box out of the way. So that blue box right there is in the way of where my new panel is going to go, because the new panel is, I believe, 39 inches long. So I need to make room for it. And of course, this other panel wasn't even the full width of the stud bay. So I'm opening up the stud bay there with the oscillating tool, and I discover a cable TV wire. So I'm going to have to deal with that. You'll see what I do with that. I just drill a hole and come out of the top and then come down the side of the panel. But that's later on. So from here on out, what we're looking to do is just get this panel out of there. And part of that process is removing the nipple that attaches the panel to the back of the meter. And so that just about does it right there. So panel's out. So that's a big victory when you're doing this job. So here I'm figuring out which size socket I need to use to loosen up these lugs inside the load side of the meter. And so it's a 1/2 inch, so I just take my M12 Surge Impact, which is the greatest tool in the world right now, and bit by bit take these out. Now I'm pretty sure this is JCP&L territory, but as you can see there, they have that 5th jaw, the neutral jaw that I'm always talking about, which is kind of rare. So getting this nipple out, you got to play around with it. There's a lock nut inside the panel and then on the back of the panel, and then same for the meter. So you got to play around with this for a little while, and I got to reuse that hole. I got to enlarge it so that I can get a 2-inch nipple in between the meter enclosure and the panel, because the 2-inch nipple is needed to run the big 2-aught copper conductors that are going to go through it. I think I could get away with 1.5 inches, but I'm so used to using 2-inch, and it just makes life easier. So if I can get a 2-inch chase nipple in there, I'm going to do that, or a close nipple, I should say. And then here you see it'll come right out now. So that's a good thing right there. So once I get that nipple out, now I got to make it, I got to get rid of this knockout right here and make it large enough so I can fit the 2-inch nipple through there. And on the other side, I'll trim out the OSB in a square pattern so I can get the nipple in there with the lock nut. And there won't be any problem making a mechanical connection between the meter and the new 200 amp main breaker panel. whenever I do a flush mount panel, I always like to take out more sheetrock than necessary if I can. I got, I don't know, maybe like 10 or 12 circuits up there, and so you can fiddle around, try to get them into the panel and push it in there so you don't have to patch the sheetrock. But I take more sheetrock off right there so I can work with it and get a better electrical installation and come back later on and just patch the sheetrock. I'm kind of thinking the electrical panel there is more important than the finish in the garage here. But we will go back and we will patch the top of the panel area and then off to the side as well. So removing all those wires, you can see why I needed to do that with the size of this panel. I'm ready to go here, and I'm just sizing up and getting my nipple in place the best way I know how. So you're going to do some dry fits to make sure it's going to work and they're just right. I'm real close to that edge right there, so I want to get my lock nuts on that nipple on the inside of the panel before I install the panel, because it'll almost be impossible then to move that lock nut. That's how little room I have. So if I can get that tight before I put the panel up, that's a win for me. And of course, you got to make sure you secure it to the meter as well with a lock nut and bushing. Anyhow, so it looks like I got it in there and I'm all set, ready to go now. So I'll officially attach the 4 points on each side of the panel to the studs, so this thing's not moving anywhere. I don't know if you can notice up there in the top, there's an old, like a doorbell wire or a thermostat wire. I'm not sure what it is, but it's maybe a security wire, but it was behind the old panel and it's behind this panel too. I didn't know what it did. Probably doesn't do anything that they use anymore, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it's right back where it was, but the cable TV I had to move because the magnetic field around that cable behind the panel, I'm not taking that risk. So I rewired that. So I'm going to bring all my cables inside the enclosure here, and I'm going to use these new Arlington white button connectors where you could slide them up from underneath rather than putting the connector in first and then sliding the wire down. So these connectors go up the cable and you attach it. It snaps in from the bottom. Really nice product. I don't know if Home Depot has those, but there's a good look at them. They're made by Arlington. That makes life a lot easier. But anytime I got Romex and I'm changing the panel, in my opinion, that's super simple compared to some of those old houses with the armored cable BX stuff. Those can take a long time if you have a lot of circuits with BX cables. So now I'll strip them back and I will isolate my grounds and neutrals and my hot conductors. These are all 120 volt circuits up there. So separate the bare grounds, separate the whites, separate the blacks, and individually terminate all of them. The grounds and the neutrals go to the same exact terminal inside a main breaker panel. This panel is the main breaker, main disconnect panel, so it has the main bonding jumper. And that just connects the neutral from the service to the enclosure, and this is where your equipment grounding conductors begin. And the equipment grounding conductor is used to carry fault current to facilitate the circuit breaker, in layman's terms. So I'm using my M12 Surge here with the number 2 tip on the end to secure all my terminals here for the grounds and neutrals. Very quick, dan, 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 dan. I used to do this manually, and the drill just speeds things up without damaging any of the equipment or the conductors. So that's the way I've been doing them for a few years now. For the equipment grounding conductors, you can put 2 of them as long as they're the same size under one terminal, but you cannot do that with a neutral conductor. And the reason why you can't do that with a neutral conductor is that most neutral conductors are current carrying conductors. And if you don't have a nice secure termination on that terminal, arcing could occur. And if you have arcing, not good. So a few code cycles ago, maybe 10, 15, I don't think it's been 20 years, but some of the old panels you see a lot of doubled up neutrals. We cannot do that today, so that was a good change, a safety change for sure. So I like to keep all my circuits coming into the bottom of the panel, near the bottom of the panel, and that's what all these circuit breakers at the bottom here are for. I believe there was some kind of that PVC conduit had like 2-3 wires. I don't know what the heck it was doing, but I hooked it up the same way I found it, so it would continue working. And the orange wire is your condensing unit. And then there's going to be a GFCI receptacle that used to be underneath the panel that I'm moving to the right. And I'm going to move it over to the right because there wasn't enough room under the panel to redo another one. So the wire now to the feed out, which is that new receptacle you see on the left right there, that wire was too short. So that's why I had to put in a new receptacle. So the receptacle that I'm putting in here is going to be a GFCI protected circuit. And I believe this GFCI protection provides GFCI protection for the bathroom receptacles and all the outdoor receptacles, which is the way they did this back in the 80s when this house was built. I believe this house was built in the 80s. Nowadays, you would have a 20 amp circuit to your GFCI protected receptacle in your bathroom, but not back then. So this was common to put the GFCI receptacle in the garage and protect everything else on the circuit. The reason why we did that is because it was required and because this is the cheapest way to do it. Yeah, this was a nice job. This is in the guy's garage. I was able to pull my truck right into the driveway and back up, so all my tools and materials were within 10 feet of the space that I was working in, which speeds things up and makes the day easy. It was a nice, beautiful, sunny day. I could just listen to my music. I had a few calls. This was the day before, 2 days before the start of the Memorial Day weekend in 2022. So this looks like the beginning of the this new service entrance conductors that I'm going to do. So I'm going to do the neutral first and like to tape it really good. So that'll be the first thing that I terminate here. And see, if you don't have the wire inside the enclosure, you can make that bend with your hand rather than trying to make that bend with, 4 inches of conductor right at the nipple right there. Hope that made sense. And then back on the inside, where I got plenty of slack and conductor space to terminate, obviously you want to do this second. You want to do the hard one first and then the easy one second. And then I'll just do 2 more conductors on either side of the load here, load side of this meter. And I'll attach them on the outside and then on the inside again until I have all 3 service entrance conductors, 2 hots, and that grounded neutral is the white wire. So the area I'm working has the train. I guess that's the Jersey coastline. The Jersey coastline runs behind this house here, and so I was hearing trains, a couple of them during the day there. So that's a 200 amp main breaker right there. And a few code cycles ago, we were required to put these guards over the live terminal. So, and the idea is that there's less space for someone to be working inside that panel that gets shocked. I mean, you got an open bus bar down below there too. But I understand the intent of the code change, and I think it was a good one. So once I'm all done, I'll check for any shorts Knitting my wires there, my new conductors, and then I'll push the meter in, and then I'll come back and I'll verify the voltage once the meter's in, 240 from leg to leg, and then 120 volts from each leg to ground. Now we're good. We put the cover on. Once I get back to the panel, make sure there's power there. That's correct, 240 volts. Throw your main, turn on the individual breakers, and you're back online. Your customers got power again. So the next thing we did was we installed portable generator wiring, which consists of a 240 volt 30 amp circuit from the generator breaker that we installed inside the panel to the inlet box on the outside. We run number 10 AUG for all of our conductors. We've got 2 hots, a ground, and a neutral. And so 30 amps at 240 volts can provide 7,200 watts of power from your generator to your home. That's if you have a generator that size. All in all, this job probably took about 10 hours to do everything all together. Collect materials, permits, the wiring, etc., etc. Yeah, about 10 hours total. If you like this video, I'm hoping that you will subscribe to this channel, and of course, please like this video. I work very hard on these videos, and I'm proud of them, and I like what I'm doing. Now, I wanted to show you how I put the interlock onto the panel cover, but I got busy and working. It was later in the day, and when I looked up, the power had been out, and we did not capture the installation of interlock. But we get to see me knocking out some KO seals from the panel cover. So I hope you guys like this video. I plan on making more just like it. I love doing panel changes and generator wiring, whether it's a portable generator or a standby generator. This is the kind of work I love doing, fixing things and making things better. And this guy, his panel is definitely better than what we had when he was when he originally called me about his refrigerator not on, and we found out the breaker wasn't making contact with the bus bar. So we resolved that. And guys, I hope you really like this video. If you haven't already, like this video. Please hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys. Take care.